There you go. Thumbnail's hot.
3, 2, 1. All right, back again with another episode of The Banker, the Broker, and the Canadian. We've got the regular trio, but then we also have a wonderful guest by the name of Bruce. And he is a dentist, a business owner, a real estate guy. He's got many different ways that he's going to add value to this conversation. His journey's been fun. And so we look forward to unpacking that and understanding a little bit more about Bruce and how he might be able to inspire and entertain us today. So without further ado, does Reedy, Jim, kick it over to you? Do either of you have any thoughts that you might want to share first before we ask Bruce any questions?
You forgot to mention also an avid hiker
Okay.
and a lifelong learner, if I had
Okay.
to describe Bruce, and a good friend.
There you go. An overall incredible human. Jim, what are your thoughts before we kick it over to Bruce and ask him to kind of tell us a bit of his origin story?
Wow. Bruce is the friend you want to have that I call your to cry for friend. He's that good of a friend. And also he's a world traveler. So, I never can figure out where he and his partner, Grace, are next. Like, they'll be in Guatemala and you're like, what are you doing there? He says, we're helping people way out in the countryside and we're seeing patients for 2 or 3 weeks with a whole team that I got to go to Guatemala. And I'm like, wow, have you ever been here? Yes. So those two things, first of all, just the essence of Bruce Chou, and way outside of his dentistry. So Bruce is my to cry for friend, but also like anytime you want to know anything about world travel or any places that you're thinking about going, just ask Bruce. He can tell you.
Well, Jim, I appreciate you sharing that. I'm glad to know that, and that's something that I'm sure that'll come out throughout the time. But Bruce, real quick, let maybe just give you a chance to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about kind of what you think might be important for the audience to know about you, at least just at first glance.
Yeah, no, I you guys are fulfilling a dream of mine, is to be on a podcast. So this is my first podcast. I've always thought about, when people ask, hey, what do you do? Most people say their jobs. But I feel like one of my life goals is to not be identified with one thing, which is why I try to diversify myself in every aspect of life. But yes, my profession is a dentist. I've been a full-time general dentist for almost 9 years now. Before that, I was a dental hygienist as well. When I first graduated from dental hygiene, I was the youngest male hygienist in British Columbia, the province in Canada. I was
Representing Canada, Bruce.
Yeah.
Attaboy.
So I was only 20. So I think my goal has always been to do something higher. So now I am, it's almost a dream come true for me, because I'll share a bit later. It hasn't been an easy journey for me, but every moment I appreciate the opportunity that I have to pursue a higher education, which is partly why I've combined my passion for travel with what I feel like is very important, is to serve other people. And of
Bruce,
course,
I love hearing that, and I love so much about what you just said about what most people say when you ask them what they do. Right? It's this litany of things that they've experienced or gone through or done in their past, or their profession and the way that they, the work that they do to earn a living, as opposed to maybe like aspirations or qualities or things that are important to them, and really kind of reprioritizing what matters. I really love that.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. I think the banker, the broker, behind the banker, the broker, the Canadian, there's so much stories behind that, right? But oftentimes for example, people ask me what I do, I try not to say I'm a dentist. I usually just try to say I'm a human being, just being on earth and enjoying the most of life, right? Because otherwise they start asking me very specific dental questions, which I try to avoid.
So before being in the role that I'm currently in, I had a 10-year practice of, in my mind, it was called a financial advisor. And I thought that what I was doing was helping people to plan for their best financial future and also enjoy their financial situation for the day. But I was on an insurance platform. Okay. So I was with a company called Northwestern Mutual. And so what most people heard when I told them I was with Northwestern Mutual was, oh, this is an insurance salesman. That's what most people heard, right? How different that is from the way that I saw myself. And so lately for me, I often make a joke if people ask me what I do, and I'll tell them that I'm actually a stripper, or I'll say that I'm in adult entertainment in some form or fashion, like just in a goofy way to just kind of lighten the conversation, and it gets a little chuckle, and then let them know that I'm for hire and all this stuff. And so it's a great way to just kind of lighten the mood instead of let it be so stiff all the time.
I love it. I love it. But I'm happy to answer any questions just for you guys today. So
Sure,
feel free
there we
to
go. Yeah,
ask.
well, is it really safe to gargle with peroxide? Is that something that we should be doing?
You'd
What
be
should we be
surprised
doing?
what people gargle with. But yeah, people gargle with anything. Hydrogen peroxide, it is an ingredient in whitening mouth rinses. So it is small percentage. But yeah, it depends on what you're trying to achieve.
Gotcha. Well, one question that comes
Bruce,
to mind for
love to
me,
hear.
Bruce, and I'll kind of let you, yeah, I'll let you roll with this. Kind of starting out, you mentioned some of the aspirations that you've had since you've, kind of become a professional and since you've moved into your career. But and tell us what I would probably describe as maybe one of your first memories, right? One of your first things that you might have experienced as a child, or as you look back on your life, one of the most significant early memories, like really early memories, maybe as far back as, like, and I'll give you a second to think about it, but one of your earliest memories that might have occurred during your single digit years. Okay, so like pre 10 years old. What stands out to you when I ask about that time in your life?
Wow, I love that question. The moment you asked that question, I already had a story, maybe a bit of background story. But I have a twin
Take
brother.
your time. Yeah, cover whatever you need to.
So I have a twin brother, and when we were first born, he was almost double my weight. I was older as well, and all the way throughout high school, he was always bigger. He was much smarter, just very fast and mature. He had body hair, and I had none. For 5 years. So I matured very slow in terms of my intellect and just overall maturity. But what I could really tolerate was a lot of pain. I think I had a lot of pain growing up. Maybe being the second better half, and I think one of the things I could tolerate a lot was physical pain as well. So I remember one of my earliest memory was actually getting a root canal with my front tooth because I actually was playing tag. Must have been probably 7, and then I fell and it broke my front tooth. And to kind of show my parents that I was good enough, I decided to get the root canal done without anesthetic. So I just
Oh my
get
gosh.
when you fall and you have a traumatic exposed nerve, the nerve is live, and then when you touch the nerve, you're just jumping out of a chair. I had the entire root canal procedure done without anesthetic, just to prove to my parents that I was good enough. And of course, afterwards, I was puking all the way home. But I think sometimes as a child, all you want is just the recognition from your parents. And I think for me, I feel like maybe subconsciously that kind of led me into this kind of road of becoming a dentist because I feel like we all have kind of a story in our youth, and that was kind of mine. I feel like I understand what my patients are going through when they come with a lot of trauma, with all the fears as well. And I think ultimately I learned, after 9 years that, whatever we do, it's just a human connection. And I feel like I really get to connect with that one person. And because I like to think that I kind of understand their pain.
Bruce, that's an incredible story, man. I'd be curious to know if you're open to share, like what was, I guess, maybe the rest of your childhood like, or what kind of atmosphere did you grow up in for you to feel like that was a necessary, that was something that you needed to do, was to prove to them that you're good enough, right? Were there other instances where maybe you felt less than that caused you to have to make that point?
Yeah, definitely. One of the beauty of having a fraternal twin brother is we look nothing alike. He was almost an entire head bigger than me, so we no one person expected twins. But then from kindergarten all the way to grade 12, we were in the same class, every single class. And because of our, our last name and our geographic location, which means I have a very smart brother that covered me academically almost in every aspect. And it was later on that I realized that I actually was illiterate all the way up to almost grade 11 because all the book reports, anything that involved reading, he did it for me. So he would read the books, summarize it for me. He would read the chapter, summarize it to me. And my role was actually to make friends. So I was the social guy, making friends and planning out our events while he loves reading, so he could read a book in a day, right? So he loves the reading. So together we were invincible. But he after high school he actually left Canada and went back to Taiwan, and that's when we realized that it's almost like our left hand is gone, for both of
Mm.
us. So I really struggled uh, academically my first few years of university, which is why I'm extremely grateful that somehow I got into dental school, and I feel like it was a miracle. So I always think back and appreciate this miracle that I was given, because I feel like the universe is on my side, and because of my journey, it was very challenging. I decided to start a non-for-profit. It's called Future DMD, where I want to coach young students, from high school to university, who are thinking about being a dentist, and kind of share a bit about my insights, kind of going through the journey, because a lot of students are also finding all the challenges, and mostly, a lot of students just don't know much about the profession they're trying to pursue. Especially dentistry is very specific, and I find a lot of people get into the profession for the wrong reasons.
Mm. Man, that's incredible, Bruce. What type of events or what type of activities do you participate in as a part of your not for profit organization?
Yeah, so what we do is I actually teach the students to think like a dentist. So a lot of people just know of a dentist is drilling and filling, but there's way more than that. There's so we go into every discipline of dentistry. It's like a virtual shadowing event where I teach students everything from the fundamentals of taking out a tooth to what is all the 10 steps of doing placing a white filling, to how to move a tooth, how does teeth move, difference between Invisalign versus braces. So when the students get to understand how we think as a dentist, then they kind of have a better idea of what a dentist does. At the same time, we not only share all the glamorous things about what a dentist can do, but we share a lot of very true insights like burnout, like a lot of emotional burden that we have to face every day, when we have to try to help our patients who are very nervous, or a lot of anxiety and a lot of trauma in the past. So we share the good and also the kind of the behind the scenes, so that the students can make an informed decision on whether or not this is a good profession for them. And of course, we try to help them with how to get into dental school and all that stuff as well.
That's wonderful, man. I know I wasn't expecting to hear that, and I wasn't. I didn't realize that you had that organization. I'd love to support your organization in whatever way, and honestly, one of the ways that I think might be helpful is I'd love to speak to them. I'd love to be able to offer maybe just a different perspective, a different motivational type of presentation for them. If for whatever reason you feel like you may have shared a certain thing or told a certain story a number of times, and maybe for whatever reason it not that it's not landing, but just if you want to send a certain message through a different avenue, man, I'd love to talk to the group if that's something you'd want to put together.
That would be amazing. I love for all of you to be our mentors and talk to these young students. Maybe they'll be inspired to be a banker or a broker or entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
Canadian.
Yeah, Canadian.
In a similar way to what you already described, I think the banker component of kind of how I operate is a very, very small, it's a very small fraction of kind of what I think is most important. And so I think that'll come through in a presentation. So I look forward to doing that.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Thanks for that offer.
And Bruce, something that stood out to me as you were mentioning this, I'm sure there were different challenges, right? There were different hurdles. There were different points of contention that maybe would have thwarted or caused someone to not persist throughout your life. What do you feel like is maybe one of the times in your life that you think was particularly trying, that was maybe most difficult, right? You were kind of in the valley and being tested by fire. What do you think one of those scenarios would be?
That's a good question. I think the biggest one is probably myself. It's probably yourself. But once you overcome that, I can hear a bit of it. Okay, can you guys hear me? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we can
I
hear
can
you
hear you
okay.
okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It does have a little bit of echo.
Okay, great. Kind of awesome. So I think the first, the biggest doubter is myself. I think the second, actually, I would have to say is actually my parents. Of course, it was early part of my life, but growing up, I would say, focused a lot of attention on my brother because he was a straight A student. Didn't take him much effort to get straight A's, and I was always hoping, to be more like him. And I think at some point, my parents, I feel like my dad almost gave up on me because he just thought that, um, you know, I think it's just parents is tough, right? It's their first time being parents, but that's at least how I felt. But I think my mom was definitely a big supporter. As an immigrant family, he brought the three of us. I have a sister as well to Canada. At that time, I was only 7, so my mom was almost like a single mom, raising 3 kids. So she was definitely my biggest supporter. And I did struggle a lot through school, but I have to thank my brother for letting me copy his homework. But after high school, university, I was on my own. But I would say even then, I kind of carried that self doubt, from growing up that I had to overcome. But I think it's just the small wins that you develop that kind of helps build that.
That's so great. I love that you ended or kind of brought up that idea of the small wins, because my next question was going to be, you mentioned, right, having to overcome yourself, but what were maybe some specific strategies or tactics or things that you might attribute overcoming yourself? What might you attribute that to?
Yeah, it's I would say it's surrounding yourself with inspirations. I actually met the broker Jim at one of life changing program. It was a Tony Robbins program. So it could be attending self help programs. When I found out that I could read books, I was excited. I think it was probably close to grade 12. I almost just got addicted to reading. I almost started reading all the books that I wish I wanted to read. It's just something clicked. I could read words, but when you're kind of illiterate, it just you read the words, but it doesn't make sense to you. So it finally made sense to me. So I started picking up books like Think and Grow Rich, How to Influence Friends, all these self help books, and I started to go more spiritual. And I find spirituality has helped me because it helped me distant my ego, my false ego, with something greater.
That's awesome, Bruce. I mean, you've touched on a key point that we always talk about here in the podcast is just the 1% better each day and taking the first step. And the beauty of taking that first step is it just compounds, and there's a cascading effect to, to your point. Eventually it just clicks, you know, and then you start loving to read books. It starts with just opening that one page, turning the page, and then you're just addicted to it, right? And as you know, Jason, freak of nature, avid morning runner, you could attest to taking that first run, right? And then eventually you become that runner. So I love that point that you made. One thing I'm curious to hear, and also for the audience to hear, is um, that need to prove to your parents and seek. I don't know if you would call it their love in a sense. Does that do you find that, I see that you use it as a fuel to become who you are today. Are you now at peace with that, or is it still fueling your drive to become a better person?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's something I'm still working on, but I think without that fuel, it's almost like a rocket ship, right?
Mm-hmm.
That fuel to want to be better was the rocket that took me into space. But
Mm-hmm.
now, I'm in space, kind of free flowing, but you never forget, what took you there, right? Which is the fuel from my parents. Now they're very supportive of me. They understand, um, what I have, my challenges growing up. So I think I'm still learning to forgive, but I think I would say probably pretty quite recently, after talking to good friends, that I started to, unravel and let go better.
I mean, as a parent myself, you know, I'm very cognizant on how hard I can be on my kids, my daughter, my son, especially as I mentioned in previous podcasts, how I'm really getting involved in my son Kenzo's soccer. And I do find sometimes that we forget they're only kids, you know? And sometimes I have to remind myself that as much as I want him to be the best soccer player, I need to tell him that what's more important than being the best soccer player is that I love him. And no matter how good he is or how bad he is, at the end of the day, I still love him. So, you know, um, it's a reminder to all of us parents that all kids, all children, they seek your affirmation, and it's very important that we need to tell them that, regardless of how smart they are, how good they are at certain sports or whatever, that at the end of the day, we love them for who they are, right?
I love that. Yeah, really. I think you have an Asian background as well, but I don't remember the last time I heard my parents say "I love you." It's just
No, it's not in the Asian vocabulary.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think I think they left that out when we were born or
yeah.
whatnot.
It just kind of gives me like
I
goosebumps.
don't even know if I have a word in my language for that.
Yeah, so I think it's just I think it's just it could be you could say it's culture as well, but
Yeah.
never hear those words. You just feel the tough love. And you think that they're just gonna punish you for not being good enough. But as a child, like you said, you don't know any better. Yeah, all you know is just what how you perceive things, right? So I
Hmm.
think there was definitely a lot of just self-inflicted traumas as a child. But I'm sure my parents were trying their best to try to raise kids equal, right? Which I'm sure is quite very tough.
Absolutely. It's not malicious. It's not, intentional, but it just, as you mentioned, it's more of a culture thing. The tide has changed because, as myself, maybe because I'm growing up in Canada, I do tell my kids I love them, and I always have to remind myself that they're only kids, right? And at the end of the day, they're your kids.
That's right.
I think that actually that reiterates a point that you mentioned earlier, Reedy, is an attribute of Bruce's of being a lifelong learner, right? I think it's
Hmm.
fair to say that generations before ours, and again, speaking from, I'm guessing we're roughly all around the same age, is that I didn't see a desire to grow beyond my parents' current situation at really any point in their life. It was almost like there were no aspirations, there were no ambitions, there were no, let me extend myself beyond myself to make myself available or be valuable to someone outside of my home. Or there wasn't this, philanthropic, right? Bruce, you're already doing things like establishing foundations and nonprofits. And that wasn't even a concept to my parents, or to, maybe it was just the environment that I grew up in. But I would probably describe the environment that I grew up in as severely non-ambitious. And so it wasn't until I started looking for examples of behavior outside of my home that I began to be inspired and attracted to, strong. Not that my dad wasn't a strong man, but there were other attributes, right, outside of my home that were attractive to me that I wanted to emulate, and that didn't come until later in my life as I became more developed. And so I don't know how much Reedy or Jim has shared with you about how I spend my time, but almost all of my time is spent considering and observing and processing human behavior, right? Psychologically, philosophically, habits, disciplines. Almost all of what I do is assessing or analyzing people to how they behave. And one thing that I've noticed is that there are a large percentage of society, a large percentage of adults who are parents to children who are basically still of an elementary caliber when it comes to emotional stability. Okay. And so when you're not emotionally available to your child because you're still working through your own emotional issues, then that's going to impact the child to a great extent, because if the child doesn't feel like you're an outlet for them, if they don't feel like you're available to them, then guess what? They're not going to come to you, right? They're not going to share things with you. They're not going to be vulnerable with you. They're not going to expose themselves to you. And that's a large bit of the experience that I had growing up, and I still see it today. So it sounds like, and of course, I know Reedy's doing this, I know Jim's doing this, and Bruce, I would imagine that this is, some bit of your life too, is to be very conscious about creating space to let others know that you can be an outlet for them, right? And that you've done enough personal work on working through and over, as Bruce, as you put it, I have overcome myself to the extent that's necessary. So then I have enough left over to offer it to someone else, right? I know that was long, but and I just felt like that was kind of, it was kind of what I was inspired to say right there.
Well, yeah, I think that's super important. It could be parenting, or it could be in our professional lives as well. Me specifically, I most of my patients come in with some anxiety. We know because we take their blood pressure every time, and they always say, "Oh no, it's not that, not usually that high. It's only when I'm here." So they're nervous. Pulse is high, their blood pressure is high. So if emotionally I'm not okay, if I'm already struggling emotionally, then I'm just gonna get checked out dentist. There's a lot of dentists who are checked out. They don't really say anything. They just come in and do their thing and leave, because it's easier to just get checked out. But then if
Right.
you are emotionally well, and then you're able to be there for someone who is emotionally not as well, then because of that energy, it's kind of like, the energy just flow naturally from, low to high. They feel like they can really trust you. You can really connect with that person. It doesn't take a lot of time, but when I am emotionally abundant and very conscious, then I find that's when I can connect and help people the most.
I,
So I think you make a really great point.
Yeah, that's spot on. And if you're emotionally unwell, you might even exacerbate the situation or contribute to it, right? Someone leaves, more stressed out than they arrived if you contribute to it. And I too, I can sympathize with all of your patients too. I got my teeth cleaned last week, and it I'm tense the whole time, and they don't take my blood pressure, but I'm sure if they did take my blood pressure, it's probably like 180 over 110 or something crazy. But
Jason, you don't have a Dr. Bruce Chou though.
I
You'll be like on cloud nine if Dr.
I
Bruce
might make a
Chou comes
trip.
in.
BC,
You'll,
Well,
it's like
high.
you're
BC.
meditating.
Hey, it's really
Well,
not
high.
that far, huh? It's only it'd probably only be like a 6 hour flight or something, right? 7 hour flight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But just going back, touching on the point you made, as energy. We all know energy is contagious, for good or bad, and as a parent as well, not in your career but also bringing it home. We all have days where it's just rough at work, and it's so hard to remove that frustration and energy as soon as you step in the door. But you do have to remind yourself, your kids never seen that frustration at work, and all of a sudden you take it in and you put the frustration on them. That's not fair to them. So being, as you mentioned, having that emotional intelligence while at work is so important.
Mhm.
So, because when you're finishing work, you're taking that emotion home as well.
Hmm.
And subconsciously, sometimes you might not even know that, right?
Hmm.
And yeah,
But two, also what I've noticed is that oftentimes you experience that emotional instability or that emotional misalignment when you're inauthentic, right? And so if you're not being your true self, if you're not communicating honestly, if you're not being transparent and forthright, then that a lot of that emotional stability is an effect of that, right? It's an effect of insincerity, or or just um, being lukewarm, right? Like not being full speed in a certain direction and just kind of being half-hearted. And a lot of times too, that emotional instability builds up as a result of that, right? Whereas, and this is too part of the encouragement that I speak about pretty often, is do the best you can to allow the things of the past stay where they were and allow for them to be in the past, right? And recruit as much of your attention and energy into this moment and attempt to be fully present right here with the three of you, right? That's what my attempt is right now. I'm not looking forward, even though tomorrow, as I'm making this statement, I mentioned tomorrow, and what's going on tomorrow, and my mind naturally goes there. But before I was making this statement, I don't give two shits about tomorrow, right? Nothing matters about, I don't care about tomorrow. I'm most invested in this moment. And if you approach each and every moment most invested in that moment, then that allows for you to essentially stay emotionally stable because that moment is the most important one. And so you don't get emotionally misaligned if you're always invested right here.
that's well said, Jason. Um, I couldn't agree more. And it's funny because this morning I messaged Jim first thing in the morning, because I have my coffee and I do my reading. Have you guys heard of the book, the monk who
Yeah,
sold
Robin
his
Sharma.
Ferrari,
Yeah.
by Robert Sharma?
Hmm.
So literally this morning's page that I wrote, or that I read, one of the quote he had is, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your thoughts. So the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your thoughts. So I thought that was powerful, because you if you're present right now, me and you, and my thoughts is somewhere else, you know that quality of life isn't there. Or you're with your kids and you're thinking about work or something else. um, Add to that, if you're always thinking about, how am I going to pay the bills, or negative thoughts like that, your life is just, it sucks. So we forget how important our internal dialogue and our internal thoughts are into the quality
Sure.
of our life, right? So
Bruce, just in the brief conversation that we've had, which I've enjoyed so much so far, I would imagine that you're a fairly disciplined person. I would imagine that you're a fairly regimented person that has a regular habit of doing certain things each day. I would like for you to share what are your daily routines and what are some of the things that allow for you to accomplish all that you accomplish on a daily basis, allow you to be as successful as you are, and allow you to be who you are to your patients. What are some of the things that you have to do on a daily basis to maintain?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Probably one of my favorite questions to answer. To kind of use Jim's words, he always says you got to fill up your cup, at the beginning of the day. So how I fill my cup is I wake up at 5:50 every day. I'm very grateful because my partner, we have the same routines. So the first 2 hour is ours. So we wake up at 5:50 because our gym opens at 6. So the first thing we do is with apple cider vinegar and then head down to the gym. And instead of doing like a 1 hour workout, we keep it half an hour. So I do either cardio, weights, and then I alternate that with yoga. And I think it's so important, not just in my profession, especially as a dentist. We're always hunched forward. A lot of us on the keyboard. I feel like having a yoga day every other day is essential. It also helps with my mind as well. You're synchronizing your breathing with your motion. So after that, what we do is we go for a cold plunge. So we have an outdoor hot tub which closes during the winter. It's still clean, but they shut down the heat, so it's extremely cold. It's just pretty much matching what's in Canada. It gets pretty cold, so it could be -5. So we just plunge into the cold for about, I count to 300 usually. And then what I visualize is overcoming 300 challenges, as I count to 300. And then I go into our sauna, and that's what I do with my meditation. And then if we have time, my partner and I, we talk about our intentions of the day. We'll share challenges from yesterday or the past week that we want to talk about, and then we set on our day. We shower, we come back when we journal, and usually we'll try to read something inspirational. And of course, on my drive to work, I'm always listening to inspirational podcasts, Ed Milet or Jay Shetty or Robin Sharma, just to take care of, to fill the cup, not just physically but mentally and spiritually. And of course, the gratitudes. I also think a lot about the gratitudes. Having great friends like Jim and Reedy, and my family and the support that I have. So I mean, those are all things that I do to fill my cup, and because I know when I get to work, it's a war
Yeah.
zone out there.
not only fighting plaque, but fighting other
black,
battles.
black and oh,
Yeah. One thing I got to share here very briefly is once Bruce gets to work, he did share with me that all day long he's looking at imperfections, you know, in your teeth, in your mouth, right? And he's trained to do that within being a dentist. But above that, what inspires probably Bruce's patience to come back is that he comes emotionally vulnerable. And I think a lot of medical professionals, doctors, dentists, they come, but they are trained to kind of keep a distance from the patient and never make that connection. But Bruce does that very beautifully through, like, even the name of his company, Inspire Dental. And then the other part of having Future DMD for those who are thinking about going into this profession, what that means. What is your why? You know, do you really know all of that? And then we can help you with all the other professionals that are in DMD, Future DMD, to maybe sort through some of those things. One thing I guarantee you that if you go to Inspire Dental, that Bruce Chou does that I've never seen before is that he walks out into the office waiting area and he just sits down or greets the patients that happen to be there at that time. And what a beautiful way of like connecting with the patients before, I don't know about you guys, but I think most of us and our listening audience as well, the dentist just appears out of nowhere, like, pop out of the jack in the box, and it kind of in a scary way. And I'm already like stressed out. How much is this costing? My blood pressure is up. I don't want to be here. I postponed this during COVID for a zillion times. And then, but Bruce has a very magical way of walking out. I mean, it does take effort. I'm sure it's something that probably, he needs to find time to do. But I think that even though you may have a peppy receptionist and all this out there doing their job, just to have the dentist once in a while walk out into the waiting room and just say, "Hey, how are you all doing?" It just puts that personal touch there. Maybe like, "Hey, can I offer you a bottle of water?" It just takes that edge off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's what makes Bruce Chou and Inspired Dental, where the patients go home and they tell that story again after with their loved ones at dinner. And guess what? It's the business just they keep coming back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So many times we don't even want to go to the dentist. That's the last thing on a lot of
Bruce,
our
Bruce, you gotta put Jim on your advertising, man. That's quite the testimony, Jim.
and I can share with you that like a dentist and a dental team can really, really, really help you and maybe save your life. That's a whole nother story. So maybe we need to have Bruce back on that, because if you're neglecting your teeth, your gums, and your mouth, it's going to spread over to your brain, to like all different parts of your body. They, as dentists, know all of that, and we're like, wait, I'm just here for this, like, you know, and and sometimes if we neglect that dental hygiene, and trust me, I'll be very vulnerable here. I have, right? And I'm still not super comfortable because I haven't made my venture to like go up to Inspire Dental in Vancouver, BC, and fly over there, you know, just to see that. But I guarantee you that just the spirit that Bruce portrays in the office will get the dental patient, which is his customers, right, to come back
Absolutely.
and to tell other people. Ask Reedy. Reedy goes there, right? How
I
did
was just
Reedy get
there today. Got
How
my
did you
night
get there,
guard
Reedy?
for my
By your
trip,
wife, right?
and my wife, yes, and all our kids.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
So
did that. Well, a lot of what Jim is been sharing is actually taught by Jim as well. I spoke in everything from what people tell me. Whether it's something that uh, small things that's helped them, or something that they've gone through that they don't want to ever experience. As lifelong learners, I feel like in our profession and everything we do, we're learning from each other. That's why we're here. You guys are all my teachers as well. So I think if you're constantly learning, then there's no end, right? You're only going to get
It's
better.
so great, Bruce, and very humble of you to say it that way. But one thing that stands out to me as Jim was doing his gym and doing giving you that wonderful praise, a lot of people would agree with all of what Jim just described and would like to embody all of that, right? They would agree with the statement. They would say, yeah, that sounds nice. Yes, in concept, I would like to do all those things. But yet, for whatever reason, when it comes to actually behaving that way, something gets in the way, right? Something causes them to not be able to actually fulfill what it looks like to display that. What do you think it is, Bruce? What do you think in through either throughout your life, or something that you've read, or something you've experienced, or something that you have developed or intentionally done that allows you to, I would call it, fulfill the promises that you make to yourself, right? Or fulfill the promises that you make to your practice, or you're right. Like there's a difference there, right? Are y'all following? You guys, would y'all agree with that? There's a difference between thinking that something's the right thing to do and actually doing the right thing, right? So share with us about that, Bruce.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, this was actually what I was sharing with my team this morning. I was asking them, how many thoughts do you think we have in a day? One girl, one of my staff gets 1 million, but it's not that many, but it's 60,000. It's quite a lot. And I asked them, how many of those thoughts you think are thoughts from yesterday or repeated thoughts from before? Well, it's actually a huge percentage. So we are a creature of habits. So like you're saying, a lot of these things that we take away from either books, classes, it all seems great, but it comes Monday morning, we kind of apply maybe 10%, and the week after maybe 5%, and then eventually 0%. So I think the most important thing is really awareness. But even with awareness, sometimes I think the second barrier is time. I think with our crazy busy lives, a lot of times we're just jam packed with so many things that it's hard to stay present. It's hard to be here talking to the three you guys, having a meaningful conversation. Right, we have to make time. And I would say a lot of times at work, it is like a battle scene, just putting out the fires. For me, I feel like a lot of times I'm playing musical chairs, hopping from chair to chair to chair, exams, going back to my work, do another exam, going back to work, getting glares from my hygienist because I'm late doing their checkup, right? So I think a lot of times it's just how society has designed our profession is we're just swamped. We have to learn to multitask. We have to not focus on just this present moment, but the next 5 tasks. So I think when we do have time, I think it's much easier to be very conscious and aware. But I think the whole practice of meditation and constantly getting better is to try to have that equanimity when you're in chaos, right? And I think that's still something I'm working on. I definitely have not mastered that, but I think when I remember Jim, what Jim told me, then I go out and I take my butt out of my chair and go in the front lobby and greet that next patient, right? But I would say it's still a work in progress for me.
Sure. So I share a bit of a framework when I think about new learning, and kind of step one is being exposed to a new idea, right? And so that's just the first time that you've ever come across the idea. And then the step two is do you process that information, whatever the new information is, and do you believe it to be true, and do you believe that it can be helpful for you, right? So that's kind of the second step. Do you agree with it enough to think that it can apply in your life? And then the third thing is the third step, or the third layer of that, is that you've actually tried it. Okay. So getting to the third layer is important because it means that you've taken action based off of this new information. You agree that it's true and it can work, and you agree that it can work in your life, so much so that you've tried it, right? So that's the third thing. And you've experienced results that you're pleased with, right? And so that's a key point in that third piece, to where you experience the results of making the change. But we're not done yet. That fourth piece is the most important piece, because it is where you transfer the new learning from believing it can be true for you to trying it for yourself to making it a habitual part of your life. And it becomes a way of life, right? And so when I talk about new learning, that's an encouragement that I offer to people to go through the steps, because just hearing a new idea does you no good. You can go to all the Tony Robbins seminars you want, and if you don't apply, or if you don't first believe that it can be true for you, and if you don't apply that and then make it a habitual part of your daily life, then you're never going to experience the benefits of any new learning. So I've just found that to be an education that can be helpful when we talk about it.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. I think you have to first experience it, to know that
Oh
there's some
man, I think we
benefits,
might have
right?
lost Bruce.
We might have.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Does he
We
have a
can edit this
cutoff?
out.
I'm
Does
back.
he have a
I'm back.
cutoff time of
There's no
your
cutoff.
time
No,
limit?
Hello?
it's likely connection.
Oh,
Jason
I did the same thing.
stopped
And what's really
in the middle
cool is it's going to send him a message that's going to say connection lost. don't be concerned. All of the other recordings are going on as planned without you. It's so
Right.
it is
Yeah.
a bit refreshing to know that it kind of lets you know that.
Right.
And I think we got a lot of meat in this conversation.
We
Jason, you
did.
hit
Yeah.
it out of the park again. Reedy, you're right there supporting, you know, all of that, even though, you know, we realize that you see Bruce and Inspire Dental, you know, as a patient too. So I think that, you know, this one was just really, really great to have Bruce be the guest and to go this route that I didn't even think it was even going
Yeah.
that way. I do know that I met Bruce 7 years ago. I think all of us there were with some core issues to be very vulnerable. That in a lot of ways we may accomplish many, many things financially, gathering, you know, millions of dollars of real estate, doing all kinds of accolades and war awards in our lives, but standing there in line in front of Bruce while we're waiting to get into the event. I think a lot of us in line had one common thing, that we were there to help us grow and resolve, and that was we're just not good enough. We think in our head we're not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it, that is what I call stinking thinking.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that if we can work on that daily, I always say Bruce is with Inspire Dental, but he inspires me. You know, if somebody said, write down the top 25 people, Bruce Chou would be on that list. Definitely, 100%. You know,
Thank
and I
you.
think the rest of our group would too. But those are the things that help you be able to move forward with your life and have positive impact, like what Bruce is doing, both in his dental practice and then also in his travels.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, maybe Bruce can chime in here, but I went and stood in line even at 60 years old. I had some things that I needed to resolve, and a lot of us in line felt the same way. We had the same thing. I think as humans, especially in this social media age, you'll always find somebody that is, in your opinion, doing better than you are.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to resolve that in your mind on the issue that I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And you really got to get that going the right way. Bruce, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I think that's why we all went to that event, right? We're all trying to. There's always something that we're getting stuck on, but we kind of took the we invested in the time and the finances to get unstuck, right? So I
Yeah.
think for all those people listening, I'm sure that's part of the reason. We're all in this together, and we're all trying to figure out a better way to be our better self.
I think that in and of itself is a bit of a unique characteristic, because I would submit to you that the majority of people, and if I'm being just real honest, are not trying. Right? The majority of people are not as aggressive as someone who goes to that type of seminar. The majority of people are largely getting by, right? They're largely taking the lot in life that they have, and they're not really doing a whole lot to affect change in their life. And they don't even
Hmm.
consider that a greater possibility for fulfillment, a greater possibility for enjoyment, a greater possibility for impact, positive impact on others is available to them, right? And so, in a very meaningful way, I hope that listening to this recording specifically is able to inspire someone to even take one step in the direction of their goals, or one step in the direction of a more pleasant or more fulfilled life experience that they otherwise might not have been considering, or they might not have done that. So that's my goal for this. But one thought, and really, Bruce, I would love to talk with you for the rest of the evening. But when we can definitely have you back on. But one thing that I think is important for our audience to hear, and I think it's important for you to articulate, because I'm sure you've done it well at other times. But what would you like Inspire Dental and your business efforts? What would you like to be known for?
I would say different. You know, I think we're all designed to conform. You know, to be different means you have to think differently. You have to, you know, walk out to the lobby and greet your patients like a person. You know, it is being more conscious, more aware. So I think just different. You know, part of what I do at Future DMD as well is also being different. You know, I coach students for a very affordable cost, because I want to also help them be a different professional, a different, more passionate, more inspired dentist as well. And of course, like Jim alluded to, the proceeds to this nonprofit organization, Future DMD, also going back to helping someone around the world. So we create foundations, like mobile pharmacy projects. These are all projects that I developed while I was traveling. You know, because one of my dreams is, you know what, there's a lot of these organizations, you know, Red Cross, UNICEF, that can help people, but there's still 99% of the world that is untouched. But because my philosophy is, you know, because I get to travel somewhere around the world, I get to connect with that one person that may have never been connected with someone else. And because of the network, because of the resources that I have, I get to help that person. So we've developed a most mobile pharmacy project in Ecuador when I was volunteering there last year. We've been helping one family in India since the pandemic. When I was traveling to India 5 years ago, I met someone that lives in the slums, and we became friends. And through helping him during the pandemic, we started helping his neighbors, his community, you know, all the slums, neighboring slums. So we've been committed to helping one family every week, and we've since helped over 100 families. And most recently, we've started developing a soup kitchen there as well, so we can help, you know, 50, 60 families every single day. So these are all proceeds that where the proceeds are going to helping others, and really helping our next generation of young people, you know, develop that service mindset. You know, because like you said, Jason, I think, you know, maybe a small population of people are on the self development journey, and I would say only a small percentage of people are not just in it for themselves, but in it to help other people as well. Which I think is, you know, most of what we do is to serving other people.
That's incredible,
We
Bruce.
need to raise
Go
that
ahead. Go
percentage.
ahead, Reedy.
No, we need to raise that percentage. I hope, you know, I'm inspired by Bruce, and I hope anyone who's listening is inspired and, you know, become part of that percentage of the small percentage that's not just in it for themselves, but, you know, helping others.
Absolutely.
That's
So,
cool.
two last thoughts. I'll ask the questions together, and then we'll kind of wrap. But so, Bruce, you just made a point and mentioned how important it is to connect with people all across the world, right? And so, as I've already mentioned, my hope is that this might allow for people to connect with you and allow for you to connect with other people, not only with the message that you offer, but also the services and things that you might do. So, the first question of the two is, who is someone, whether you want to describe a type of individual or a type of profession or the qualities of a certain person that you would want to connect with? That's the first one, right? So is there anyone out there that you would want to connect with? And then the second part of that is how would they get in touch with you and how would they reach you? What's your, you know, website? What's your, you know, whatever considered, you know, way of getting in touch with you would you like to make available, if any?
So the first question is, what type of people do I want to connect with? And then second is, how do I connect? How do
That's
people connect
correct.
with me? Yeah, I mean, I love to connect with anyone that is on the same journey of wanting to be a better version of themselves every day, right? So either you are on the path of, you know, thinking about a profession, you know, of helping others. Dentistry offers quite a unique path where you get to help that one person and be present with them. And, you know, how you can reach us is, you know, we have Inspire Dental Group, we operate only in Canada so far, but our plan is to go nationwide, maybe to go down to the States. But right now we're only in BC, so you can check us out on our website, Inspire Dental Group. And my passion project, which is Future DMD, you can find us online, futuredmd.com, or on Instagram, Future. And we're always hosting workshops to inspire the next generation of passionate dentists.
That's awesome, Bruce. Thank you so much for being on. I think I could speak for the other couple of guys. They already knew you, but I feel very fortunate to have gotten to know you through this brief interaction. I look forward to our next chance to spend time together, and I'm sure our audience will enjoy this. Thank you again for being on.
That's awesome. Thanks for having me on, and I promise next time maybe I'll share a bit more
There
dental
you go.
tips.
All right, guys, that's a wrap. Peace.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
You're welcome. Thanks for